Okay, well, welcome back. We're going to spend some time in the shop tonight. One of these projects that I put off for way too long, and we have had problems with our garage door opener, and I took it down to see what the problem was, and turns out I thought I had to replace the whole unit. So we've been without a garage door opener for a little while, and I thought tonight, having a bit of downtime and a bit of free time in my hands, I'm going to try and repair the garage door opener. So the story is that I was going to throw out the entire unit and just buy a new one. And a good friend of mine realized that I was doing this and said, "Hey, I've got one just like it, and you can have it." And apparently with his, the electronics is no good. And the motor is fine, and the gearing is fine. But on mine, the electronics is fine, but the gears are all worn out. So I'm going to attempt to just do a quick swap, and hopefully everything will work again. So that's what's on the agenda for tonight. So I'll run through what I think will happen, and we'll get to work. So these are the two units. The one on the left is the one from my good friend. And as you can see, it looks nice and clean in there. The gear is in excellent shape, and my understanding is that the motherboard or the electronics doesn't want to perform, or it does funny things. But virtually everything is in the same place, and all the bolt holes are in the same place, and the only difference is the motor size, which is a 1/2 horsepower, as opposed to mine, which has been sitting in the snow and outside for the past half year. And as you can see, the gear is totally worn away, and I think that's because the track in my garage has a little catch on there, and I have to fix that as well. And every time it would hit that catch, it would kind of eat away at the teeth of the gear. And so I'm going to just attempt to take everything out of this one except for the motherboard, and replace it with whatever is there. So I'm going to take a couple of pictures so I remember where all the wires go, and we'll get started on this nice Tuesday evening project. So the very first step is I have to release the tension on the chain so that I can get that chain off the sprocket, and that's a simple task of loosening up that bolt and just turning the bolt out and releasing the tension just far enough to get the chain off the sprocket. So we'll take the chain off the sprocket, because that whole sprocket, I believe, has to come out in order for the exchange to take place. And I think just for ease of handling, I'm going to take the whole bar off. It's a matter of 2 nuts, and we can get the whole bar off, and then it'll be easier to handle. Okay, so looks like everything is either a 8mm socket that holds the housing to the frame, or a flathead screwdriver. And now the trick is to remember where everything goes, but I think one of the things that we have to do first is there is a clip here, right there, that holds the shaft up in place, and I think that's just a quick release, and we'll get that off, and then we'll start taking all the screws off. Okay, well that wasn't too difficult. So now the idea is to take that spindle off, and it's a matter of 3 bolts that hold that in, and then we will do the same on the other unit and swap the pieces and put them in. So hopefully that's all it takes. Okay, so you can see the terrible condition that gear was in, and as it turns out, it's awfully hard to move. So I don't think that since we've moved in, I haven't maintained it, but it's been 2 years, and now you know why the motor was working so hard, because this is just gummed up, very hard to spin. Okay, well, I'm going to off camera take apart the other one, and we'll put it all back together. Okay, well, the donor unit is apart, and as you can already see, this spindle with the cog and the gear spins much more freely, so that might have been part of the problem on ours. But having the motors out now, there is a slight difference. So the motor on the left is from the donor unit, and this one is from our garage, and it has an additional little electronic piece, but it seems like it can pop right off and fit into the 2 holes to the right of the shaft. So we're going to give that a try. Okay, so the little additional piece that came off of our motor came off real easy. All you had to do was compress those little tabs, and it came right out. And the little plastic cover that was on the shaft is just friction fit, so that slides off pretty easy. And so now we'll install that on the 2 holes to the right of the shaft on the new motor. You never really figure on how these things work, why the adjustments are the way they are, but after you've got everything apart, it's kind of ingenious how this works. The center rod is attached to the drive shaft, which spins back and forth this little clip right here, and when it comes into contact with this one, it turns off the motor, and then when you press the button, it spins and comes in contact with the other piece of metal and knows when the door is open or closed, depending on which loop it is. Kind of a neat little thing. Okay, so everything is back in place. Everything fit nice and neatly. The one thing extra that I did do was I pulled the capacitor out of the donor unit, because we're upgrading from a 3rd horsepower to a 1/2 horsepower. I'm not sure if that makes a difference, but at any rate it was there, so I swapped it out. And everything is back in place, so the next thing is to plug it in and press the button. And hopefully nothing explodes or starts sparking. Let's give it a try. Okay, well, we've got the unit plugged in, and so far so good. Let's press the button and see what happens. Okay, well, it ran the full length and turned off where it had to, so I'm going to call that a success. So I guess the next step would be to maybe spritz a bit of white lithium grease on the moving parts, the gears, and maybe the bearing, and we'll close her up, bring it down to the garage, and install it. Alright, well, everything's back together. I've oiled the chain, tightened the chain, tightened the bolts, cleaned the track. Yeah, looks like it needed a bit of maintenance, so I think we're figuring out why that gear wore out. At any rate, this one's all back together, oiled, ready to go. I opted for the 1/2 horsepower shroud, as now we have the 1/2 horsepower motor in there. The one thing that I had to do is on both units, the clips for the light fixture were all broken. So I just hot glued that in place. Seems to be nice and tight. Now my understanding is that if you run into this problem and that plastic gear disintegrates, you can replace just the shaft without having to take the motor out. If you remove that clip, undo these 3 bolts. Now unfortunately you have to do it from the inside, otherwise it would be a real simple fix. But anyway, you do have to take it down to do the repair. On the inside there were indicators that it is a Chamberlain product, so maybe these parts are even available yet. Not sure. But at any rate, we're going to bring it down to the garage and hang it up on the ceiling, and hopefully we'll have a working garage door by the end of the day. Okay friends, the garage door opener is up and in place. I managed to find all the pins and nuts and bolts, but the proof is in the pudding. Another successful project in the books, and this is from the woods, is sweeping the garage. So looks like we're a little bit ahead of spring cleaning at this time of year. All right, well, that's another project in the books. This time it only took me 6 months, so my record's getting better. That garage door opener had been sitting in the snow and been rained on, and yeah, surprised it still worked, but it does, and we're happy that we don't have to get out of the car anymore to open the garage door, so that'll be nice. So we're hoping that you found that video somewhat informative or enjoyable at any rate, and if you did like it, we would love it if you would subscribe to our channel, like and share, and hit the bell icon, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for coming.